hoping the reveal that Spider-Man Far From Home primarily takes place outside of Peter Parker's home of New York City isn't too much of a spoiler. That being said, there will be some more in-depth spoilers if you keep watching, so consider this a heads up. While Peter might not have had a relaxing vacation, he did get to visit some pretty enviable destinations. Today we're going to take a closer look at where he traveled and the challenges related to filming there. Everyone knows Peter Parker is a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and his home turf is the decidedly unfriendly city of New York. His home is a big part of his personality, both in the comic books and on the big screen. Even when he got to meet the famous Captain America, he just wanted to talk about his beloved city. In fact, there seems to be an unusual concentration of superheroes located in New York City, considering it was once the home of Tony Stark, Natasha Romanoff, and Steve Rogers. Okay, maybe it's not the safest place to be a hero, all things considered, but you can't deny it has a certain charm. So why did Marvel Studios want Peter Parker to leave New York during Spider-Man Far From Home? Well, hopefully the title of the movie helps give you some insight, but Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige also provided fans with some more insight. Peter is taking off on summer vacation, and the fact that he's going overseas is supposed to drive home the fact that he's desperately trying to get away from it all. And by all, we mean the fact that he fought terrifying aliens in outer space. He got dusted and was revived only to lose his mentor/father figure. Yeah, a staycation wouldn't quite cut it under those circumstances. According to Far From Home director Jon Watts, he had surprisingly little cinematic inspiration to draw from. Naturally, the character of Peter Parker is a big reason why the movie took place somewhere other than New York City, but Mysterio played his part as well. According to Far From Home director Jon Watts, Mysterio was his first choice for Spider-Man villain when it came time to put together this movie. He's one of his most iconic villains and biggest enemies, yet he'd never been featured on the big screen before. In the comic books, Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, is a special effects artist who specializes in messing with Spidey's mind using his over-the-top illusions. In Far From Home, the character got a major upgrade to Stark Industries' scientist. He couldn't just have Mysterio tossing around smoke bombs in New York City like he does more often than not in the comics. One of the great things about Mysterio is that he can make pretty much anything look possible, and Watts said this opens up the door to some pretty amazing visual possibilities. But there was one location Jon Watts originally wanted the movie to feature which did not end up making it into the final cut. During Avengers Endgame, we learned that the displaced Asgardians had ended up making a home on planet Earth. Specifically, they had settled in Tonsberg, Norway, which, yes, is a real place. In the first Thor movie, we learned it was the site of the battle against the Frost Giants, and in Captain America: The First Avenger, it was revealed to be the location of the Tesseract. In Iron Man 2, it was even one of the locations S.H.I.E.L.D. was keeping an eye on, and it's where Odin went back to spend his final days in Thor Ragnarok. Clearly, it's a pretty historical site in the MCU, which is why Peter Parker and his classmates almost went there as the first stop on their summer vacation. But while we didn't get to see this particular destination, there were plenty of others to look at. The school trip started out in the Italian city of Venice, which was the perfect place for Mysterio's water elemental to make its debut. Although Tom Holland and the rest of the cast really did travel to Venice, they actually filmed some of the scenes set there near London. Many aspects of production took place at the Warner Bros. Leavesden Studios, where stunts could be performed in the relative safety of a closed set. The Venice set included a section of the famous Rialto Bridge, and of course a giant water tank to stand in for the canal. Even matching the exact color of authentic canal water was a challenge. They don't exactly have paint swatches for it at Home Depot. Specialists were called in, gondolas were imported from Italy, and divers hovered just underwater to steer boats and potentially perform rescue maneuvers. Quentin Beck was presumably able to get all of the information he needed about Spider-Man and his itinerary thanks to the Skrulls impersonating Nick Fury and Maria Hill. No offense, Talos and Soren, but you're not quite on Nick Fury's espionage level quite yet. He knew Peter Parker was heading to Venice on his school trip, so this made it the perfect place for the water elemental to just so happen to appear. Quentin hoped to run into Peter in order to evaluate his competition and get his hands on those sweet, sweet Edith glasses Tony irresponsibly left behind. Seriously, couldn't he have just slapped a training wheels protocol or something on them at first? There are always some challenges when shooting on location, but the cast and crew of Far From Home were welcomed to Prague with open arms. Sure, people in the Czech Republic probably enjoy Marvel movies as much as anyone else, but being a filming location also meant getting some sweet tourism dollars. Some sources claim Far From Home was the biggest budget movie to be filmed in the Czech Republic in well over a decade. Originally, Marvel considered having Peter and his classmates travel to Budapest, Hungary, but Prague campaigned hard for them to film there instead. But while Prague won in this case, Budapest has come out ahead on other projects. Hellboy 2 was supposed to be filmed in Prague until the producers got a better offer from Hungary. But Prague was able to sweeten the deal for Far From Home with incentives from the Czech Film Fund and the Prague Film Fund. This isn't the first time these organizations have managed to relocate a major film. They did so in 2015 with the Chinese movie Somewhere Only We Know, which made Prague a huge hit with the Chinese tourists. Production designer Claude Perr claims the city practically rolled out the red carpet to the cast and crew when they arrived, which isn't all too surprising considering the studio reportedly spent about $11 million during the 2 weeks of filming in the Czech Republic. Perr describes the average citizen as being absolutely starstruck to see actors like Tom Holland, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Zendaya on set. To be fair, New York City is probably one of the few places on Earth where people wouldn't be positively starstruck under the circumstances. Getting permits and exclusive use of the iconic Charles Bridge wasn't easy, but there was an even more difficult challenge to secure the location. The crew was unable to shoot footage in Prague's Old Town Square due to its size and the cost associated with the endeavor. Instead, they were able to find a suitable replacement in Liberec, which is a city located about an hour and a half north of Prague. The ultimate confrontation between Quentin Beck takes place in London, atop the famous Tower Bridge. But as you can probably imagine, filming there was pretty complicated. The city limited when shooting could take place, and the cast and crew were only allowed to film there early one morning. Not only were they dealing with an extremely limited window of time, but they also weren't allowed to stop traffic that needed to pass through. With all of this in mind, it's no wonder the studio resorted to using a replica of the Tower Bridge for most of the action. Although they were able to film at a UK studio, getting that bridge to look just right wasn't easy. The steel beams in particular gave the crew trouble, since the originals had been painted over multiple times, giving them a specifically textured appearance. To replicate this on set, the crew ended up adding sawdust to their paint in order to produce a lumpy texture and around the edges of the beams. While we're sure you probably were more focused on the action than the paint job, it's one of those things which would have detracted from the scene if not done properly. It's actually kind of funny thinking about Tom Holland shooting scenes from Far From Home in London, considering how he got into character for the movie Spider-Man: Homecoming. Holland was born and raised in London, so he had to work to get into character to play New York City native Peter Parker. He went undercover and enrolled in a New York high school in order to do research on his role. Holland didn't attend just any old high school, but the prestigious Bronx High School of Science, which counts astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson and Iron Man director Jon Favreau among its alumni. Other than the student Holland was shadowing, only a few staff members and administrators were in on the scheme. While Peter Parker is clearly the main character in the movie, he spends most of it living in the shadow of his late mentor, Tony Stark. While Tony was alive, he saved the world on more than one occasion, but he was also far from perfect. Well, far from perfect might be putting it mildly, considering he's the guy responsible for creating Ultron. While Peter deals with his grief, he's also clued in on the fact that Tony didn't always make the right decision. In fact, it seemed like Tony rarely paused to consider the ramifications of his actions, as evidenced by the entire squad of disgruntled former Stark Industries employees, including Quentin Beck. Spider-Man: Far From Home drove home the point that Peter can't escape from being a superhero, but it also made it clear that he can't get away from dealing with the consequences of Tony's actions. Even though Tony has been gone for about 8 months when the movie starts, Peter still finds himself cleaning up after him, even though he's way outside of their humble home state. We see Peter learn he can't escape being a hero, and of course he learned this lesson just in time for a secret identity to be revealed during the mid-credits scene. No matter how far from home he travels, it seems like no place on Earth is safe for Spider-Man at the moment. So, what do you think about the decision to depict Peter Parker on his overseas summer vacation? Did you enjoy seeing Spider-Man swinging through the streets somewhere other than New York City? Or would you have preferred he stay the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. See you next time!